Let me be very clear. Greed is not good. And here is a New Year's resolution that I will keep if elected president, and that is, if Wall Street does not end its greed, we will end it for them.
Greed is not good, Joe. Welcome back to Morning Joe. Still with us, we have veteran columnist
Bernie, why didn't you say that to me? Can you believe this?
I'm just saying, and the managing editor of Bloomberg Politics, Mark Halperin, is with us. Join the conversation. We have Democratic presidential candidate Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. It is great to have you on the show again.
It is great to have you here.
And you've been working it. My God, you're tireless.
Well, we're off to Nevada in a few minutes.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to just touch on where we began here, and you talk about Wall Street and breaking up the big banks. How would you do that if you had to?
Well, it's not difficult to know how to do it. What you do is have the Secretary of Treasury ascertain which banks have the potential of being too big to fail. Which banks, if they got into trouble, could bring down much of the economy. You ascertain which banks are in that position, and in fact, you break them up.
But Senator, that's most of the big banks now. Too big to fail has gotten even bigger now.
That's right, Joe. That's a very important point. People don't know this. We bailed out the large banks because they were too big to fail. 3 out of the 4 largest are now significantly larger than they were when we bailed them out. But not only that, not only is there a danger of more risk and bailouts, the danger is the concentration of power in a handful of banks is very frightening. You got the 6 largest banks with assets equivalent to 60% of the GDP of America, issuing 2/3 of the credit cards and about 1/3 of the mortgages.
So if any of those banks went down tomorrow, we, the taxpayers, would once again be stuck bailing them out,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
How did that happen?
We were supposed to fix this.
Yeah, we were supposed to fix this after September the 15th,
Well,
2008. What happened?
I don't want to break the bad news to you.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, we're
Yes,
ready.
Wall Street is very powerful, and they prevent serious things from happening.
Are they very powerful when it comes to controlling Hillary Clinton? Were they when she was a senator?
They are very powerful in controlling the economics and political life of this country. They spend billions of dollars to get deregulated. They're spending huge sums of money now to protect themselves. You need somebody. I mean, in all honesty,
Did Hillary Clinton help protect Wall Street? As a New York senator, did she help protect Wall Street?
Do I think Hillary Clinton or many other senators have shown the courage that is necessary to stand up to Wall Street power? The answer is no. And the reason that I'm running for president, as you know, I've known Hillary for 25 years. We're friends. But I think in this critical moment in American history, when you have a Wall Street situation, when you have an American middle class which is disappearing, when you have massive levels of income and wealth inequality, when you got climate change, we need a president who now has the courage to stand up to the billionaire class and Wall Street.
Does Hillary Clinton have the courage to stand up to the
Well, I'm running for
billionaire
president
class?
because I think not. All right? Because I think at this particular moment, somebody has got to tell Wall Street and corporate America that their greed is destroying our economy and the lives of millions of people. They cannot have it all. Look, here's the fact. The middle class of this country, despite huge increases in productivity, is disappearing. 47 million people are living in poverty, and you have massive levels of income and wealth inequality. Almost all new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. These guys, we have a corrupt campaign finance system, right? Billionaires are buying elections. We need leadership now to say, really, enough is enough. You guys can't have it all, period. And that's what my campaign is about.
Talking about contributions, we brought this up earlier this week. We are absolutely stunned by your numbers the last quarter, that you got almost $30 million in, and over the last quarter, the average contribution, $27. I worked with you. I mean, we've both been in politics for a very long time.
Yep.
I've never seen anything like I've seen.
There hasn't been anything like
with
it.
your numbers. What is happening? How are you connecting with people this way?
Joe, first of all, if I were on your show 8 months ago and I told you that we would have 2.5 million individual contributions from 1 million people, averaging somewhere around $27, never in a million years would I have believed that was possible. What it shows, first of all, is that you can run a national campaign without being dependent on wealthy people and a super PAC. We don't have a super PAC. Number two, it does show that there's a level of enthusiasm and energy and people willing to come on board the concept of a political revolution that says, you know what, we have to come together and take on big money interests in this country and create an economy that works for all. So I am astounded. You're not the only one who's astounded.
Who are those people out there? Who are the people that are giving you $27? What are you hearing when you're out at these massive rallies that you hold? What are they telling you?
What they are telling me is they are very frightened and nervous about the future of our country. And I think the money comes in opposition to their understanding that super PACs being funded by billionaires are very dangerous to the future of American democracy. And I'll tell you what people also worry about economically and politically is the movement in this country to oligarchy. If you have the Koch brothers and a few of their friends spending $900 million to elect candidates, does that sound like a democracy to you? And many people are saying no. So they say, Bernie, I don't have a lot of money. Here's 30 bucks, here's 10 bucks. Do what you can to protect my family, my kids, my parents.
Those people haven't maxed out. Well,
No, they have not maxed out.
They're coming back.
A lot of people can give $27
Again.
A lot
Couple of times.
That's what I think. For me, that's what Willie is
This is a movement.
so powerful about his fundraising apparatus. Hillary Clinton obviously maxed out with a lot of bankers, a lot of lawyers. Bernie's average last quarter, $27. Those people can just keep giving.
Well, that's what we were just talking about. They can come back and come back and come back. I want to ask you about some of the economic conditions you just described. Wage stagnation, huge problem. Underemployment,
Wages.
the shrinking middle class, all these things. We've had a Democratic president for the last 7 years. So aren't those statistics in many ways an indictment of President Obama?
Really, not really. Let's be clear. And my Republican friends seem to suffer from amnesia in terms of where we were 7 years ago. When Bush left office, we were hemorrhaging 800,000 jobs a month. When Bush left office, the world's financial system was on the verge of collapse, and we were running a $1.4 trillion deficit, the largest in our history. Have we made significant progress in 7 years? The answer is yes. But what sometimes, to be honest with you, my Democratic friends forget to talk about, it's not just the last 7 years, it's 40 years.
Right.
40 years
Right.
on the Republican and Democratic leadership where the rich get richer and almost everybody else gets poorer. Today, I mean, this is really an unbelievable thing. You talk about anger out there. The male worker in the middle of the economy, that guy right in the middle, in inflation adjusted for dollars, is earning $700 less than he earned 41 years ago.
And Bernie, since 1973, Jeffrey Sachs always talks about this, since 1973, average wages for male workers in America have gone down.
Exactly.
Since 1973.
Exactly.
The next generation is not going to do it.
So you're exactly right. You can't look at the past 8 years or even the past 16 years. So how do we reverse that?
Well, we got to be fairly bold. I mean, first of all, we have to recognize that reality. All right, let me throw in another part. Wages have gone down, but the people on top are doing phenomenally well. What we have seen, Joe, in the last 30 years is a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to the top 1/10 of 1%, whose percentage of wealth has doubled in that period.
And why? It's not all tax policy.
No, it's not all tax.
technology as well. It's
Right. It's a
lot
variety
different
of
things.
factors.
So how do we holistically, how does President Sanders holistically approach globalization,
Right.
technology revolution, tax policy?
Okay. Fair questions, and it ain't easy stuff, right?
Right.
But the first thing we have to do is recognize the reality. Are we satisfied with the status quo? I think we're not. What does that mean? We got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage.
Exactly.
Okay? So anyone works 40 hours a week in this country should not be living in poverty. I believe that's 15 bucks an hour over the next several years. Pay equity, obviously, for women workers who are now making 79 cents on the dollar. That's a pretty easy one. Joe, Willie, Mike, Mika, real unemployment in this country is not 5%. It is close to 10%. Youth unemployment is off the charts. African American youth unemployment and underemployment is 51%. Guess why we have more people in jail than any other country? Because kids don't have, they're not in school, they're not working. We got to address that problem. So what do? We create a massive federal jobs program to put our people back to work. How so? Rebuild a crumbling infrastructure. Our roads, our bridges, our rail system, airports, levees, dams need repair. Put people back to work. $1 trillion investment creates 13 million jobs. Okay? Number 3, deal with the trade issue. Okay? Corporate America has designed a trade policy which says we can shut down in America, we can go to low-wage countries, bring the products back into this country. I think we have got to change that. Number 4, if we're going to do well, we need the best educated workforce in the world. All over the world, countries are saying, hey, you're a bright young person, you're going to be able to go to college regardless of your income. We should do the same. And that's why I'm advocating free tuition at public colleges and universities. Now, your next question, I see it in your eyes, Joe.
How do you pay for it?
That's what it was, Mika. How do you-
Actually, you know what I was going to say was numbers
I
2
love the
and
jobs.
numbers 3, whether you're talking about increased
Love 'em all.
funding for infrastructure and questions about trade, a lot of people that go to Trump rallies would agree with what you're saying, which is, we've talked about it, there is a crossover there that's very interesting. And a lot of Republicans
Outsiders.
I know say we don't have to just keep playing by the old rules.
That's right.
So how do you pay for it?
Okay, well, let me answer this.
But
Last time I ran for re-election, got 71% of the vote in Vermont. We got 25% of the Republican vote. So obviously I have differences with Republicans on issues like gay marriage or abortion, but on many of these economic issues, working class Republicans also. How do you pay for it? Okay. The premise is that when we have had a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to the top 1/10 of 1%, when you have major corporations in this country that in a given year are paying 0 in federal income tax, you need real tax reform. I know this gets a lot of folks nervous, which tell the wealthiest people in this country and the largest corporations they will start paying their fair share of taxes. An example, right now, you have major corporations making billions, stashing their money in the Cayman Islands and in Bermuda, and in a given year paying 0. Make sense to anybody?
No.
No. All right, it doesn't make sense. I think we have to dampen Wall Street speculation. I believe in a tax on Wall Street speculation can bring in substantial sums of money, enough to pay for free tuition at public colleges and universities. That's what I'm advocating. I think elderly people cannot make it on $12,000 or $13,000 a year, Social Security. I want to expand Social Security. Lift the cap on taxable income starting at $250,000. Right now, you're making $10 million, she's making $118,000. You're both paying the same thing at the Social Security. Lift the cap. We can extend Social Security for 50 years, expand benefits. I think we should do that.
Senator, we live in a country now where the middle class, the vast majority of the middle class, live from paycheck to paycheck. If you believe, as I think you do, that insurance companies, insurance conglomerates are part of the financial system, what can be done in terms of breaking up insurance companies so that healthcare policies are reasonable, affordable, and understandable?
Mike, thanks for asking that question. I hope everybody knows that the United States is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right, and that allows private insurance companies to make huge profits off of the healthcare system. So I think we've got to do 2 things. And I know my conservative friends do not necessarily agree with me. First question we have to ask is, should health care be a right of all people, or should it not? I think it should. We've decided public education is a right. You don't have to be rich to go to high school. We should make that determination. Every other major country on earth has done it. Second of all, if you're going to do that, how do you do it in a cost-effective way? That's really what your question is about. And frankly, you've got to get the private insurance companies out of health care. But it's not only insurance companies, it's the pharmaceutical industry